Does an angel contemplate my fate? And do they know the places where we go when we're gray and old? 'Cause I have been told that
it's just us lot here to actually pass comments or stories about Bob, and I think to actually be here for Bob and know that he's remembered by us all and for a long time, and just understanding how much he did for us and for the community and everything else. I thought the best way, there is a condolences book going around, so please do write on it. Don't leave before you've written on it, just write your name, that's fine. You don't need to write a speech or anything else, just your name's fine, or anything else you want to say. There's also a website for donations to Bob's favourite charity, the Bridge House, which was a favourite for him, and there's already almost £500 actually been donated online for that already, so I'd like to thank everybody who's donated there. Buffet here, if you'd like to contribute towards the buffet. Any surplus money will also go to the charity, so it's just one thing or the other. So please feel free and do eat the buffet because we paid for it, and being Scots, you've got to finish after a few words about Bob, just to speak up. Nothing necessarily prepared or anything else, but just a memory that you would like to share about Bob or your time with him or whatever.
To go, and I still remember, and I'm sure James remembers, when the days when we used to stand up to talk because there wasn't a PA system or a speaker system in the town hall. Not so sure it's one there now because I can never hear it. But his first meeting was at a group meeting chaired by Roy Bullock, and Bob didn't stop talking. And people were going, "Oh, not him again," on every subject. And I phoned him up that night and I said, "Bob, if you want to be listened to, shut up." He went, "Oh, right, okay." And I think after that he did. And I can remember his surprise when I was made leader in 2012. I invited him to take over chairman of licensing. He said, "Why have you picked me?" I said, "Bob, you've got more experience than anybody." And he went, "Oh, right." It was sad that he lost his seat, because I think he was a jolly good councillor, not only for Tunbridge Wells, but particularly for Sherwood. He looked after the people there as if he was the shepherd of the flock. And I did forecast, particularly to Alan, that if he loses his seat, it will be the end of him, and sadly I was right. But he lived for Sherwood, he lived for Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, his position on Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, and I think he will be a great loss to not only us who were his friends and in my case, drinking partner, but also to the borough as such, because he was very wise. He knew the system, he knew how to do it, he knew lots of people. I don't think he ever missed a party conference, and as I say, I shall miss him. I'm sure lots of others miss him. So here's to you, Bob.
I've got another question about Bob. I've been bumped into Bob in recent times and in the town, in the high street in the past, and also I spoke to him about other things, about environment and other things. I also spoke to him on the phone. I kept in touch with him before he passed away, like a friends together, so we were talking and staying in touch. So he told me basically he was upset when he lost his seat, and he said to me he wants to retry again for 2023 standing, but we sadly see he can't, because it's a shame we lost our friend Bob Backhouse.
In the last few years of his life, he had a lot of illnesses, different illnesses, and he suffered constantly from pain, and as we can all see, from carrying huge quantities of weight as well. And that was something to do with his illnesses, or so he was told by the doctors. He never really complained to anybody about what he got, although I think some of us did know what he was suffering from, although no one actually seems to know what he died from. And that's how secretive he was, even to the end. I will miss him, because he was a drinking companion with David and myself. We used to go out for lunches on a regular basis, once every 2 weeks. David and I, after he was no longer a counsellor, used to take him out to lunch. And he used to look forward to those. And he used to look forward to going out of the area as well, which was quite nice. So I think that's something which is a hole now, which I'll have to fill with perhaps somebody else. So I should look around and find someone.
We've got to look at someone a bit younger.
So can I say once again, Bob Backhouse, a wonderful man.
I'm going to give you a little anecdote. So the first time I went to mare making, the officers saw us come in and they went to Bob, "Is this Mrs. Backhouse?" So for all these years between us, the joke has been that I was Mrs. Backhouse, which is somewhat amusing. Obviously,
Nothing you want to tell us then?
no, nothing. But we kept that going all those years. Obviously, I worked closely with Bob in Sherwood, and what everybody's saying is, yes, he was definitely a part of Sherwood. He was very well known. People would, his thing was on the 277 bus. Everybody knew him. That's how he got his work done, how people met him. He was a member of St Philip's Church, so again, people knew him from there. But for me, he was a close friend. For me, he was someone I could ring up, I could go out for a drink with. We spent hours on the phone putting the world to rights. And I'm going to miss him more than anything. It's going to be so difficult not to have him around. So yes, thank you, Bob.
Can I just say, Lynn,
Yeah, Bob Backhouse, now there's a character for you. Only one Bob in this world, only one Bob in Sherwood, as everybody knew. And as his county councillor, we had some laughs. We did have some laughs. We worked our socks off. I remember one election when I was actually up before I was a county councillor, and I got a desperate phone call from Bob saying, "I need some leaflets delivered. You know, it's not looking good." And I came straight over from Pembury, where I was also delivering leaflets. Tore down the Bobs, went down Fairmile and places in Sherwood to actually deliver these leaflets. But that's the type of thing that we did for Bob, and he was Sherwood, and you know, everybody who witnessed that election last May, I'm not going to get too political, it was a stitch up. Bob would have walked that, I think, if other parties had stood in that election, and I think we're all very cognisant of that. And it was a real kick in the teeth for Bob. For a loyal servant, I think, of this borough of Sherwood, I think that he was treated extremely shabbily. And I agree with David. I concur that we all knew that the writing was on the wall once that election was over. And I remember during COVID, I actually went round, this was before his election result, that I went round, did some shopping for him and things. And of course, there was a nice litre bottle of whiskey in there and everything else, and he was chuffed. And during my time as a county councillor, it was a great privilege and honour for me to go and pick him up at St Philip's Court, lever him into the car, and then we'd go off, and he'd have his clipboard with him. We'd go and report potholes in Sherwood, and we must have done thousands, you know. And the main ticket on that was, of course, that when I got back to his turning just into Sandhurst there, was that he said, "Paul, I think it's time that we partook of a libation." And I said, "Am I going to refuse, Bob?" So into the Robin Hood, we'd have a couple of sherbets, and I'd get the laptop out and log all these pothole faults, because he didn't like doing that bit, Bob. So I did that for him. And I think the most funniest thing that Bob and I used to chuckle about was that we had this common friend of God. I won't say common, she's actually a very posh lady who's brought a smile to many men in Tunbridge Wells of my vintage, who lives at 27A on the Pantiles. Fifi Lamore, of course. Yeah, Fifi Lamore. with great restorative powers. We used to have really, really good laughs. Oh, we used to really chuckle about that. But as I've written in the book, which is doing the rounds at the moment, my friendship with Bob, and it was a long time, 18 years, I don't know, 19 years, maybe 20, that it was full of laughter and love, actually, and we liked each other. We didn't always disagree, but we always walked away from any disputes as friends. And I'm sure that we're all going to miss him. I think it would be absent of me this evening to say thank you, David Scott and Aaron, for actually organising this bash. To actually kind of make sure that we can all, as a communion, remember Bob for his great skills. He was only lent to us, and he's gone off to other pastures now. But I'm sure over the bridge we'll meet again, and we'll partake of a libation. Well done, Bob. Job well done.
Because no one said anything from that yet. I left the council in 2016, but I know quite a lot of you here because we've shared lots of times in the same committee rooms, and I see some of you still. But my recollection was that I remember when Bob was a brand new councillor, and right from the beginning it was clear that he was really good for the local area, always asking relevant questions, always polite, always keen to learn. And then of course as time went on, then you learn from him and he would tell me things, and it was just a very good arrangement really. So yeah, he will be missed, and that's why I wanted to be here today. From the officers' side, we appreciated how he was with us. That it's, politeness and trust is a big thing in making good decisions, so I appreciated that. Thank you.